Danso.
Good morning, madam. Good morning to your listeners and viewers too.
Great. I'm told that you are the only Christian who is an Alhaji.
Yes, that's true. Because my wife just returned from Hajj, and that bestows on me the title Alhaji.
Fantastic. That's beautiful. Happy
That's
New
great.
Year
Yes.
to you.
Very happy return.
Now, we've been talking about, we've been going through the list of persons that either have a service or diplomatic passport, and it's coming on the back of the notice from the Office of the President to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the recall of some of these of these passports. The list is quite vast in terms of people holding the diplomatic passports. People are reacting and saying that wow, it's quite a long list.
Yes. Um, Diplomatic passports are not issued just to any other person. When you hold a diplomatic passport, there are several things that go with diplomatic passports under the conventions of the UN. And therefore, it's not just given to any person. Then there are other persons holding what we call service passports. Because of the nature of your work, at times you need to travel or use that passport to service our diplomacy. Conferences that you are attending on behalf of the government, UN delegations, other delegations, and things like that. Or maybe the nature of your technical job. And so, whilst others hold diplomatic passport by virtue of working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, others hold the diplomatic passport or the service passport because of the services they render to the nation. And these persons must hold themselves very high up. If we abuse it and give it to everybody and anybody else, they can be used for any clandestine activities that will injure the relationship between us and other countries where we visit. And so it must be held very, very dearly and clearly. So I'm not against the withdrawal of such passport from undeserved persons. My biggest worry about all this thing is this: that if you leave it again in the hands of course, it is the ministry which issues those passports. If you leave it in the hands of the ministry, I will say we are not going to get it abused again. It's only we are changing the faces of persons whom we have given these to.
The
Let us
holders.
have the criteria properly, and then we know you qualify, you don't qualify. I tell you, because I also traveled in the past, I traveled a lot, and still I'm traveling. Friends were advising, why don't you go for a service passport? And I looked at it and I said, what do I need a service passport for? My ordinary passport takes me everywhere for the past how many years that I've been traveling. So, some people, when they travel a lot, just believe that service passport will enable them go through protocols and that sort of thing quickly. So, well, for me, I'm not against the withdrawal, honestly speaking. There are some undeserving persons holding diplomatic passports and holding service passports, even including foreigners. There was a time in Ghana we heard about foreigners holding Ghanaian service passports and or diplomatic passports. So for me, the withdrawal is in order, but then let us not leave it to abuse again.
But how do we prevent the abuse from happening if for now the discretion lies with the foreign affairs minister to issue the service or diplomatic passports? How do we check this discretion to ensure that it is not abused?
Probably two things. Probably, if it is still in the hands of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, then those criteria for obtaining it must be set clearly and then digitalized. So when you apply and you don't try, it could be put under the office of the president because he's the chief diplomat of the country, and be put at the office of the president with the national security advisor perhaps in charge. Because implications too. I would have put it there under the presidency, where it is digitalized, and then there is very little kind of human intervention in that. And that as a security advisor, he will be able to oversee persons who would not qualify and that kind of thing. Alternatively, if it's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, once the criteria are set and people apply, through the digital process. They may qualify or not qualify, and the computer will just take them out automatically and that kind of thing.
Now, looking at the list, for instance, religious and traditional leaders, businessmen and entrepreneurs. Also, there is, I've seen many people react to officials of the National Cathedral project and all. You know, when you look at the list, are there any group that you think that perhaps they can do without the service or diplomatic passport?
There are several such persons who can do without a diplomatic passport. Chiefs, white chiefs, eminent chiefs who may be doing some diplomatic services for the country. I can imagine the way the former Utufo and the current one have done a lot to even solicit advances from the international financial institutions. Such persons, if you accord them diplomatic passport, I wouldn't mind. But when you say chiefs and that every chief gets a diplomatic passport, I wouldn't subscribe to that. But then there are several of them also. They said, well, businessmen and that kind of thing. It depends on what kind of business. Yes, it depends. If the business is such that the government accrues much from that business, an international business that the government has a hand in it, you know, then we will say that we could have them. That's what I'm saying, that let either Parliament or whoever is in charge try and set up the criteria. Very, very important. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs can help set up the criteria, because look, holding a diplomatic passport is a very serious thing. You can't just hold a passport and not behave like a diplomat. And the ingredients for becoming a diplomat are very high. You know, your persona is very, very important, because any least infraction on your person by a host country creates an enormous diplomatic row. So we should be very careful as to who qualifies and who doesn't qualify. As I told you, friends were advising me to go for service passport, and I asked myself, is it because I travel so much? You know, and that is not a criterion. It can't be a criterion that because I travel so much, then I need to get a service passport. No, absolutely not.
I mean, there are talks of how sometimes the proximity people have with people in power has led to them getting service passports. Should that also be checked? It ties into you asking for specifics when it comes to the criteria, correct?
That, you are very correct. You see, the human element in all these is the corruption in the country, the whom you know attitude of us as human beings. You know, it's one of the serious cancers in the country where we need to. Other than that, if we even withdraw these, we are only replacing them with other people who don't qualify. So the proximity to people in power is also a big problem. Yes, you know the minister, you know the deputy minister, you know the chief of the chief director somewhere, and obviously then when you apply for a service passport through him, you usually get it. You know, so the ease of getting it because of proximity to power is one of the biggest problems, and that is why a whole number of people have them who may not have qualified to be diplomats of the country.
Now, let's turn our attention to security. Yesterday, the president announced a list of 4, if I'm correct, of 4 persons, key security appointments. Let me pick your thoughts generally on these individuals selected. What are your thoughts?
Well, I know of 2. I don't know of the 4 you're talking about, unless you educate me. I know of Prosper Bani as the National Security Advisor. And then I know of DCOP Razak as the National Security Coordinator.
Okay, so there's...
these two persons I know personally, and I don't think I have any quarrel with that.
Okay.
So he's an experienced person. And with his experience abroad and here, his experience in Yugoslavia and several other places, and his insight into security is amazing. And therefore and also a member of the National Democratic Congress for a long time, and a person who knows internal security and external security very much. I know him personally, and I don't think I have anything against him as the National security advisor at the Jubilee House. The DCOP, Razak, is a person who is known in the police circles as an honest person who is very diligent where security is concerned. So he too, as a national security coordinator, I don't think it's a bad choice. The other two, I don't know. I don't know which areas you are talking about.
Okay, so the other two, COP Nathan Kofi Boachi, Director of Operations at the Presidency for Security Affairs, and then
Right.
Charles Kipo, Director General of the Bureau of National Security, now National, now NIB.
That's right. Yeah. Well, these areas need astute persons. Kofi Boachi has been known to be it's a couple in the police service. You know, the name Kofi Boachi is a household name. And the appointment is very personal. I mean, Chief of Operations at the Jubilee House is a personal thing. You don't go for anybody just because the person has a PhD in security affairs or that kind of thing. You want somebody who is a practitioner, somebody who is well known and knows the strategies for security. And I think Kofi Boachi has proven to us in this country that, he's a feared person, if I'll use that word. And I strongly suspect that the president wants him as a personal security. That's the most important thing. I don't think I will also have quarrel with him. The NIB...
Charles Kipo.
Yes, well, I don't know him very well.
Okay.
So I don't think I have a right to... but I don't know. The NIB keeps us... I don't know whether he will stick to that name, NIB, as if it's the National Investment Bank.
What do you think of the change in name? Did you find it enthusing?
No, not personally. If you want to ask me, during that time, some of us were suggesting. I suggested a different name to the National Security Minister. We said national. It's like the BNI. Keep the BNI, but make it Bureau of National Intelligence. Bureau of National Intelligence.
Bureau of National Intelligence, okay.
Exactly, Bureau of National Intelligence. So the BNI still sticks. It's an acronym which is known very well in Ghana. But you change the essence of it. Bureau of National Intelligence, that's what I suggested. But then the powers that be called it NIB. I wasn't comfortable with it because it reminds me of the
bank.
Bank of, yes.
The National Investment Bank.
National Investment Bank, yes.
I probably can say that you're not alone in that feeling, because a lot of the times when we mention NIB, we all think about the bank and not the Investigative or Intelligence Bureau of the country. Now, still remaining on security, Boko has been, key on the table. We saw that the president took a trip to the area to engage the factions as the first step, because he made a promise that it will be a priority to restore peace to the area. It's early days yet, but what do you make of this approach?
The approach is very good. You come in very new as a president, and the very hot spots around you, you assure the people that, look, you want to tackle it. Maybe differently, maybe continue from where the predecessor left. For me, it was a good diplomatic ploy which he employed. Going to Baku as the head of state to say that, look, I know about your problem, and this problem must be solved. And I want to assure you that we are going to work together to solve this problem. And then he talked to the service chiefs and then the big gurus in the security sector and assured them also that we need to work together to solve this problem. For me, it was a big diplomatic step. His presence over there sends a lot of messages, and I believe it was good. He must live up to what he has said, but he must understand the historical trajectory of the problem. He must not work it through the prism of partisan approach. That, as for me in the NDC, I'm able to solve it. That is one of the reasons why most of the hotspots in the country have been intractable, because our politics has eaten so much deeply into almost all the conflicts. Our research shows that there is hardly any of the conflict spots in Ghana where the political divide does not throw a mirror onto it. In Boku specifically, it is very clear. In Dagbon, it's clear. In Boku, it's clear that the Kusasis are aligned to the NDC, and the Mampusis are aligned to the NPP.
Mm-hmm.
So resolving the problem is a Tony. In Dagbon, the Abudus are known to be NPP, and the Andanis are known to be NDC. So if you approach it from those angles, it will be very difficult to resolve the problem. Because the way to solve a conflict is that you must do a conflict analysis and know all the pillars that are propping the conflict. We have analyzed these things and we have always told government, careful. I was very happy how President Kufuor listened to most of us and decided to go on a tangent which is non-partisan. He brought in what we normally call a track 2 kind of diplomacy. Track 2 means putting people unrelated to the conflict at all to start diplomatic moves. And he used the Asantini as a track 2 person, and it works perfectly well. That's why we have a seeming peace in Dagbon. But as soon as people perceive that, oh, he's an NDC man trying to solve the problem, he will solve it on behalf of the NDC faction. It may die down a little, but it will erupt in a very worse form. So my plea is that the president must know the trajectory, see where we have reached, and maybe employ the processes that President Kufuor employed in solving the Dagbon crisis.
But what about the people themselves there too?
They need to be involved. You can't solve a conflict without the people. They need to be involved. But until you have started removing the props, if you look at the Boku conflict, it is history, it is land, it is the media is even involved as part of the props of the Boku conflict. When I give you the props, you see that it's history. The history of the people have not been properly focused and told. People are adding and subtracting. It is land, it is chieftaincy, it is politics. You begin to remove any of the props that support those things. It is poverty, it is whatever it is. You need to transform the conflict over there. We have mentioned this. Several persons, not me alone, have written about what is called conflict transformation. And I always will refer to President Kufuor. When most of us were hammering on this thing, that one, you will remember that President Kufuor quickly established one of the finest stadia we have in the country in Tamale when there was no premiership club in the northern area, in the Tamale area. So you see, you transfer the conflict from Abudu and Dani to football conflict. And many more people, both Andani and Abudu, were playing football on that field and trying to form one club. So you see, again, whilst we are talking about Boku, we need also to transform the place. Can we have some factories sent there? Can we have NGOs, when they want to work in Starr, send them there to Boku area to transform the place? When the place is transformed, the conflict dies. So conflict transformation, whilst you are involving the people means that changing their focus from conflict to something else. So these things are all part of the game in resolving conflict.
And in terms of the people, getting themselves involved, how about they also lending themselves to the process to give way to peace? Because one of the major criticism that usually comes up from people observing is that sometimes it feels as though the people themselves are not committed to peace.
If you have a receptacle and you pour liquid into it, the liquid will take the shape of the receptacle.
Yes.
The people will subscribe to what you bring to them if you bring it well. Let me give you a typical example of how conflict can blow up even though you want to involve the people. There was one time an Honorable Deborah as the regional minister for Northern Region, if you remember him, I think Kufuor's side. I brought him to our place to come and give a lecture, and he gave a very interesting lecture, which was very good for us in conflict resolution. He is NPP, and as a minister for the region, he decided to use his knowledge there, because he knows the people, knows the language, has stayed there before, to resolve the conflict. So when he was designated a minister and he arrived at Tamale, according to him, I'm refreshing his own words, he went there and he believed that since he's NPP, it would be better just to see the NDC faction or the Andani faction first. So he met with them talked to them and told them, or assured them that he's there, and until he resolved the conflict, he was not going to leave Somalia. Unknown to him, that's not the way to enter conflict, trying to involve the people. The next time he sent a message to the Abudus to come and meet him, they swore that they would never meet him. They don't like him. What was the problem? The problem is simple. They sent a proverb saying that when you go to a place, you look for your own people for them to tell you their story before you go outside. And that was the end of Deborah. He was unable to start the process at all. And the process exacerbated, very much exacerbated. So you see, in conflict, involving the people means that if you don't change the perception of the people, even meeting them will be a problem.
Yeah.
So how do you enter a conflict? That is the main problem. You see, our approach to the conflicts in Ghana has not been very, very fruitful to the people. You send soldiers there, and soldiers are not trained to be preachers. They are not preachers. They are not chiefs who are going to use. They have their modus operandi, and when they go there, if you are rough, they'll kill you. So we use the kinetic approach to solve conflict. We send soldiers, they'll send the policemen. We had Operation Gong Gong since the 1990s. Remember that Operation Gong Gong? Nanumba Kokomba War.
Yes.
And the Gong Gong is still going. We haven't solved those problems. So a kinetic approach to conflict does not involve the people. You are rather exacerbating the situation. So involving the people, change the receptacle and pour the liquid into it, and it will take the form of the receptacle.
Away from internal security, let's talk about diplomatic relations. So on the eve of President Akufo-Addo leaving office, we saw a letter from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs communicating with the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, indicating that we were temporarily suspending ties with them because of, some issues in relation to Morocco and all that. What did you make of that communication or that decision to suspend our ties with the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic?
I was very sad. And a lot of my colleagues outside were inquiring for me why Ghana should do that. One of the biggest pillars of Ghana's foreign policy is Pan-Africanism. And under Pan-Africanism, Ghana has been known to be leading the fight for the African cause. Another is multilateralism, that we would go with all the multilateralist organizations we belong to, what the organizations that AU, ECOWAS, UN, and things like that. So we cannot be unilateralist. Right now, Sahrawi Republic, the whole of Africa recognized Sahrawi Republic in 1979. The UN recognized it and decided that some steps should be taken to try and resolve the issue between Morocco and Algeria on the Sahrawi Republic. Now, since then, Morocco has occupied the place, and there is tension between Morocco and Algeria on this issue. Ghana stuck to the multilateralist agenda of the AU and of the UN. Now, some countries, specifically the Western countries, plying their diplomatic ties and the economic ties and going by the Moroccan ploys, have tried to woo some African countries to toe the line, especially the US. And I'm surprised that Ghana just jumped onto the bandwagon. About 44 countries have recognized Morocco's occupation of the Sahrawi Republic. Mm-hmm. And it's very sad. Unfortunately, for me, if the United Nations has not denounced itself of the first stance it took, then Ghana has no right to go beyond the United Nations stand or the AU stand. Unfortunately, we seem to be pandering to the whims and caprices of the West, especially the US. And then we quickly just joined these 44, 47 countries who have recognized Morocco's supremacy over the area. Where was Morocco when the Spaniards were leaving the area? When they left the place to themselves and the desert area, nothing, no governance and whatnot. The Polisario Front had fought, and driven the Spaniards away before Morocco says it is my territory. Mm-hmm. It's a sad situation. It's a very sad situation that Ghana among the revolutionary countries which supported the Saudi. It's like we have betrayed them, honestly speaking. A lot of my very good colleagues, professors, and that kind of thing, just would call, what is happening? Ghana of all countries. So it's unfortunate. It's very, very unfortunate. I was sad. I must be honest.
But what could have, influenced this decision, especially the timing of the communication? It was on the eve.
The line is breaking.
Yes. Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me? Doc, can you hear me?
Hello?
Okay. Can you hear me?
The line was breaking badly.
Okay, but can you hear me now, please? Okay.
It's still breaking.
Okay, so let's re-establish contact with Dr. Vladimir Antwi-Danso. Hopefully the connection will be better these days. The connectivity issues are quite a lot, and you'll be talking in this lots and lots of interruptions in there. We hope that the NCA is working on that. It's not just even on radio. Most often on personal phone calls, you're speaking and then everything just jumbles and mumbles up and you can't hear anything. We're working the telephone lines to reconnect with Dr. Vladimir Antwi-Danso. So hopefully the connection will be better. Doc, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Fantastic. Yes, so I was asking what could have influenced this decision, bearing in mind even the timing of the communication. It was on the 6th of January. It was the eve of the President Akufo-Addo administration coming to an end.
Well, I think I can only speculate one thing that precipitated the action. Some force, maybe from the U.S. and the West, maybe the European Union. Yes, that's all. They need numbers to change the UN decision. So 44 countries have recognized, Ghana 45, another, and that's what the West normally does. Look at the situation in Gaza. The United Nations takes a decision, America vetoes 4 times. And no country is trying to force anything out. I don't mean taking guns to go to Israel. And what America is doing is going from country to country to let people try and recognize Israel's right of self-determination. But they are not trying to let countries recognize the atrocities being committed against the Gazans. And so gradually you see country after country trying to support Israel. And this is exactly what they are doing. In the Moroccan situation, Morocco has been able to influence Western thought against a revolutionary Algeria, that Morocco is now saying, we will solve the problem. The problem is easy. We'll give them autonomy. And when we give them autonomy, they are part of us. If you want even the referendum, let's have the referendum now. When they have flocked the place with Moroccans. So you see, one way or the other, I believe it is one of the Western machinations to force countries, one after the other, to be able to get Morocco the recognition. And that's all I can see. I can see that there is a big hand behind, forcing countries. And the West does that a lot, bribing countries to the point of, whatever it is, promising left, right, center, and they will get you through. I can't see any other reason, because which of our pillars shall we use as the reason for changing our foreign policy towards the Sahrawi Republic? Which of I said we have 4 pillars: Pan-Africanism, good neighborliness, non-alignment, and multilateralism. So which of the pillars will we use to justify our action? I can't see any. I can't see any of the pillars justifying our action. In the same vein, some time back, we recognized the country Kosovo, and we withdrew our ambassador from Serbia. And I was asking myself, for heaven's sake, how can we recognize Kosovo when the UN resolution on Kosovo did not include statehood? But country after country started recognizing Kosovo, and they needed many more countries so that the UN would then change its stand and recognize it. And Ghana became one. I was livid. I think that those days I wrote some articles. But then who am I to change anything? So that is it. I can only see a long arm twisting our arm so that we can recognize Morocco's overlordship over the Sahrawi Republic.
Now, what do you expect the new administration to do about it? Or there are many who have talked about how this decision has tied their hands. Can they do anything about it?
They can, but not immediately. That will be suicidal. What they can do is to now use what we call offensive diplomacy. By offensive diplomacy, you try and also influence other countries to maybe go counter to such a situation. If they get a lot of African countries, very high African countries, say Egypt and other countries, to say they still support.
Hello,
If you go contrary right now, it will show the instability that we have in our foreign policy. What they need to know is to offensively induce others to stand by the AU action, to induce others to stand by the UN action. Then the Ghana will say, oh, we are sorry, we made a mistake. That will be more diplomatic rather than just changing it to show your abhorrence to the previous governments. I don't think I would advise that. They need to go on the diplomatic offensive.
But what does it do? You spoke about how your colleagues have been calling you, expressing shock and disappointment about it. What kind of does it do anything to our image as a country? And in reference to the four pillars you even reference in connection to what our foreign policy is.
Well, somehow yes. Analysts and observers. You are a specialist on Ghana, maybe you are in the U.S. I know one of my colleagues in my former school is interested in West Africa. You are a specialist in West Africa. You know a lot about the history, the trajectory, the independence, and where we are now today. You know our foreign policy. You know everything. Then all of a sudden, the parameters you have set for yourself for analyzing the foreign policy of Ghana just goes out. It's like it becomes idiosyncratic. Like you don't have a system anymore. So they will call and find out. These are the people who are calling. And for them, these analysts and specialists on Ghana and that sort of thing, they'll be wondering what is happening. And that is why they are calling. It does not damage as such seriously because every foreign policy will have admirers and people who would shun them. For example, what I was talking about Israel, that there are admirers of Israel. So one way or the other, yes, several countries who support that cause will still continue to admire Ghana. But those who are revolutionary might not be about. So I don't think Algeria will be happy. I don't think Mozambique will be happy. Yeah.
Now, so does it in any way, you talk about Algeria not being happy, will it have any impact on our relations with those countries as well, especially with Algeria, which has been at it with Morocco in relation to the SADR?
Not necessarily a negative impact. The only thing is that it depends on how you handle anything you do to your friends and or adversaries. This time, Algeria is a very good friend of Ghana. Maybe by this time there have been some undertone talks with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs trying to seek answers. They have done that already. If the explanation is satisfactory, fine. If it's not satisfactory, Algeria may be withdrawing some good things that it has been having with us, maybe withdrawing gradually somehow. There's always a diplomatic way of expressing anger or acceptance. So this is what will be happening to us, where countries who love us are concerned and those who hate us are concerned.
So ultimately, we have to be tactful.
Very, very tactful. That's the essence of diplomacy.
Now, let's also briefly talk about.
In any case, let me quickly draw this. In any case, the diplomatic offensive I was talking about, Ambassador Kwam has a small book, in that when our government wanted to withdraw, they could have initially had an offensive to make 2, 3, 4, 5 African countries also go the same way with us. Then the impact will have been seen. They'll say, oh, well, it is a general thing that many African countries are now withdrawing. So that way of using diplomacy must always be studied and applied quickly. But if you don't do that and you come out the way we came, it has a lot of implications. Yeah, now I'm listening to you.
And let's talk about our relations with our neighboring countries, Burkina Faso, like Cote d'Ivoire, yes. Togo, Mali, and the likes. At the inauguration, we saw the leader, the Burkinabe leader, Ibrahim Traore here, and we saw representative from Niger as well. As of last night, the Malian Prime Minister Abdoulaye Meiga also arrived in the country to deliver a special message to the president as part of a state visit. What do these, visits mean to our relations to these countries, especially, with all this, the three countries indicating that they are exiting ECOWAS? There's been a 6-month, grace period that ECOWAS is expecting or hoping that they would get them to return, but at the moment they form their own alliance and all that. Having them, pay us a visit and, honoring our invitations and all, what does it say? What does it communicate in terms of our relations?
Well, it shows how Ghana is dexterous where diplomacy is concerned. Remember, I said one of our pillars was good neighborliness. And good neighborliness means that every country in the world is our good neighbor. Right? And then non-alignment and things like that. So these countries within our sub-region are our good neighbors. We don't have to dictate to them what kind of government they should have. So no matter what a government they have, we still have to have a relationship with them. I was very happy to see all of them here. I was very happy to see Burkina Faso here, because speculations were rife, as if it were Burkina Faso is so much angry with Ghana and does not want to have anything to do with Ghana. That was false. Their presence here shows that everything was false. So good neighborliness has been shown. And for me, diplomacy doesn't end until war starts. So if they have left us as at ECOWAS, and Ghana used to be the chair of ECOWAS, and we really want them back, these are some of the things we have to do in order that they will see that when we are talking to them, we mean business. So it's like the invitation to them was very, very good that they are here. And you see, it is around such situations that diplomats are able to talk. There's the possibility that Mahama spoke to Traore privately. There is that possibility. There is always that possibility that our top diplomats, they are spoken, corridors and whatnot open for future talks. So they are coming here, does not speak any ill of anything at all. For me, it was positive, very, very, very positive.
My final question has to do with, I'm returning to Ghana in our security.
Sure.
In the architecture we adopt, it looks as though it changes with which political power is in office. In the previous, the just past administration, there was a national security ministry. At the moment, under this administration, there would not be a national security ministry. First, why is it that there is no consistency with regard to, our security architecture as a country, irrespective of which powers and which parties in power?
It's very unfortunate. It's very, very unfortunate. So, students of Ghana's security might be wondering what is happening. As you were saying, you know an architecture, you know the structure, and all of a sudden, from government to government, things change. But I'm strongly believing that the main architecture does not die with governments. What happens is the personalities and the nomenclatures. Even though there will not be any minister for national security, the structure is still there and it is in the hands of somebody else.
Okay.
Maybe the national security coordinator is now acting or doing all the work that the minister may have done. It used to be that we didn't have a minister, and then the ministry was introduced. So I believe that the main architecture, the structural semblance of our security hasn't changed much. It is the nomenclature and the personality that have changed.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for speaking to us. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Alhaji Dr. Vladimir Antwi-Danso. Enjoy the rest of the morning. All right, then.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Doc. Bye-bye. You had us engage Dr. Vladimir Antwi-Danso. He is the Dean of Academic Affairs for the Ghana Armed Forces Command College. You're still listening to the Morning Star here on Star 103.5 FM. We'll go for a break. When I return, I'd love to hear from you. What you have to say in relation to what we have spoken about. It's still the Morning Star here on Star 103.5 FM. When I return, I'll also bring you a brief report on the Malian Prime Minister, Abdoulaye Mega. Also taking a trip here to deliver a message to President Mahama from the Malian leader. It's still the Morning Star. I will be right back after this.
Let's have breakfast on the Morning Star.